All right, so you've learned a lot about methods and some of the different things that we can do, and we're going to expand upon that by talking about the out and ref keywords. And so I have set up two methods inside of our Math Helper class to demonstrate how these two keywords work. So just to get started, the out keyword allows us to pass in an argument to a method. So you can see we use out and then we pass in whatever value that we need, but we basically get like a free return variable. So this method doesn't have a return value, but it allows us to change the value like we were if we were returning it. So the ref keyword we've talked about by reference and by value before. The ref keyword is used when we want to explicitly pass an argument by reference. So meaning that when the value of that parameter changes after being passed through the method, then a new value would be reflected in the calling method. And so I've set up this demonstration to show you how this works. So you can see that this numbers out takes an out value and sets it to 9. Now we're not doing any returns here. This is a void method. And numbers ref does the same thing with the ref keyword, but sets the value to 7. Now over in our method test, I've set up two test methods so that we can look at how this works. And one of the key differences between out and ref is that the out variable that we use does not have to be previously set to a value, where if you're using it by ref, you have to set it to a value so that there's an initial value in there of some sort. So when we are passing the number via the out parameter, let's debug this so we can look at it. So our initial number 1, it doesn't have a value, so its default value is 0. We move into our numbers out method, so our value is 0, and it sets value to 9. We can see that in the autos window here. And when we come back to our assertion, our number now equals 9. And this has to do with that idea that variables are a named location in memory. So when we are specifying that we're using an out variable, you are essentially letting this method not have the value of the variable, but you're letting it have the home address reference in memory of the variable. So when we set this value to 9, it changed it wherever it was referenced. So our assertion that the number 1 now equals 9 passes. That's true. We set that in the method. And we know that that's not common behavior because anything we normally do in methods stays in that scope and would not affect a variable over in the test side. So to give you the other view here with our testing ref, let's debug. So when we have a ref variable, we have to set it to some kind of initial value. I just went ahead and set it to 0. So we can see that number is 0. We come into our method, value is 0. We set value to 7. So now this value is 7 anywhere that we want to use it here in the method. And then when we come out here, we can see that it's also set it to 7. So they do kind of the same things in that they're going to allow you to tamper with, in a sense, the variables that are in play on the previously called section of your stack because they are editing the variables at their memory location, which will change them for all locations and not just a copy, which is normally what we send over, that by value. So an out parameter is very much like having an extra return value because we could change the value of number 1 here and still create a return and return a value like we've learned how to do in methods. So gives us a kind of an extra bonus there. Sometimes we want to be able to return multiple values at a time, so we can set up any number of out variables that we want to use. So instead of making a copy of the original value and storing that copied value in a different memory location, when we use ref or out, the method gains access to the original memory location. And both identifiers, whether ref or out, that is used in the calling method can refer to the same area of memory. Any changes made to that data are reflected in the variable when control passes to the calling method. So can be handy as long as you understand that that is the behavior that you're going to get. We have to include, you'll notice here in the method parameters, if we're declaring an out here in the signature, that when we call it, we have to use the out, and likewise the ref here when we're calling a method that has a ref in the signature. So that's something to pay attention to. And then the major difference is, do we have an initial value set? So with ref, we have to have something set in that variable, whereas without, we don't have to have something set in that variable. So I know these can be tricky, and it's one of these kind of things where you're like, well, maybe I don't ever want that behavior, and that's fine. But we need to understand all of the tools that we have in our toolbox so that we are more prepared for solving problems when we see something where this would be the kind of thing that you would need to use.